Okay.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our second meeting for the Stakeholder Advisory Committee for Region 2. Welcome again, and we are excited to get started today. I think we'll start off. I still haven't gotten the agenda yet, Mark, but I'm looking for.
Oh, I put it in the chat.
Sorry. I'll pull it up. Yeah.
Okay. The Zoom chat.
There we go. All right, great. Okay, so first thing, I guess we can kind of confirm our agenda for tonight. Then we will go ahead and approve our January 2022 first meeting Stakeholder Advisory Committee notes. And then the next is the region plan, boundary scope, roles, and responsibilities recap. So I guess to kind of start us off, did everybody have a chance to take a look at the agenda for tonight? It's in the chat. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Great. So I guess is everybody, do we have to approve it? Does everybody approve of the agenda for this evening's meeting?
So we'll do a motion and then a second, and then we can do a vote.
Do we have any motions?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Thanks. Any seconds?
I second it.
Thank you, Kemi. Okay, so it's therefore approved.
So, just call it a quick vote. Sorry, Keisha.
Sure.
Yeah. So does anybody? Right.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Okay. Very good.
Okay, perfect. All right. Next up, we have our January meeting notes from our Stakeholder Advisory Committee meeting. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at those meeting notes from last month? Did anybody need a link dropped, or I think those were actually included in our email that you sent out, right?
Yeah, they're included there, and they're also on the Google Drive in case you lose an email.
Okay. Did anybody have anything they wanted to comment about relating to the notes, or do we have any motions to approve the actual meeting notes?
I move the motion to approve the meeting notes.
Okay, thank you, Kemi.
Second.
Second. Oh, we have 2 seconds. All right. We'll take 2 seconds. Just all approving?
Aye.
Aye, great. Thank you all. Okay. And next up on our agenda, we have our region plan boundary scope, roles and responsibilities recap. So I know that Mark as well as Carrie are going to give us a brief presentation giving us an overview of all of that great information we read from Plan 2040, as well as our map. So I can hand it over to you, Mark and Carrie.
Yep, Carrie will start us off then.
Sorry, classic, I was muted. Yeah, it's nice to see all your faces. Also, I just want to add, we're going to try to have faces for a little bit before we transition to the slide deck here. But Mark and I will regularly try to recall the scope and purpose of the plan when we start these meetings, just to kick us off and make sure we're all on the same page. So for you folks and anyone new who's joining us in the audience tonight for the first time, just a reminder that the purpose of this plan for Region 2 is to evaluate the community assets and the needs across Region 2, and then develop a shared vision for the next 20 years. The region plan boundary includes Maryland City, Laurel, Annapolis Junction, Jessup, Hanover, Fort Meade, and then all of the smaller neighborhoods that all of our SAC members represent. So we're going to anticipate that this process is going to take an additional 20 to 24 months from now. And we'll go ahead and just put the map up real quick. Mark, I guess I'll do it. So share my screen.
Okay.
So that works.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got the interactive one up as well.
And I assume everyone can see that.
Yeah.
Great. Great. So just a reminder that that's our boundary that was set forth in Plan 2040. And we can go ahead and move on. So, oh, Mark, did you have a poll that you wanted to get us started with here?
Let's see.
Sorry, we're using a new Zoom coordination for us. So thanks for bearing with us on the.
So we'll do a poll when you switch off to me.
Okay.
That's our first poll. Yeah.
Great. So as you all had kind of requested at the last meeting, Mark and I are going to do a bit of a, let's call it a more in-depth overview of the Maryland Department of Planning and Plan 2040 resources that we provided. So it's kind of high level, but we did also take the time to provide some highlights to you the last couple of weeks about Plan 2040 goals, policies, and strategies that specifically focus on the region plans. And we did just want to highlight some of that, as well as the MDP materials, just to make sure we're all working with like a similar understanding of the scope and goals of what this Region 2 plan is going to look like. So as always, feel free to stop us at any time. So over the next couple of slides, I'm just going to review the Planning 101 modules. This map on the left is a zoomed in version of the plan land use map for Region 2. And as you learned in the MDP materials, the goal of comprehensive planning is to kind of figure out how land is used now and in the future while protecting the quality of life for all residents. So the comprehensive plan recognizes the relationship between land use and strives to protect quality of life for everyone. And as you should have seen in the MDP materials, Maryland is really big on the smart growth approach to planning. So that means that planners try to focus development to encourage a mix of building types and uses, diverse housing and transportation options, development within existing neighborhoods, and then robust community engagement throughout the whole process. So these are the themes that we're going to come back to often as we're working together, is the idea of smart growth and how to kind of preserve quality of life. And then all these decisions and recommendations that we're going to be working on together are going to be influenced by existing conditions, a lot of looking at trends, forecasting. Of course, a huge component again is public input. And then the shared community vision that we all come up with as the SAC work group with public input. So I did, and then of course there is also that the module for the 101 module underscores that planning regulations importantly also have to uphold private property rights, and regulations can't deny a landowner of all economically viable use of the property. So taken together, all of this is what constitutes or goes into a comprehensive plan. And we did want to pause here. I do feel like I'm going quickly through this, but there is a lot to get through. So I will pause to ask if anyone has questions about this. We also wanted to find out what you all think as an SAC it means when we say that a goal of planning is to protect quality of life. So if anyone has some ideas about that, we can start thinking thematically through some of this. So when we say that a goal of a land use plan is to help protect quality of life, what might that quality of life look like to residents of Region 2?
Because I'm assuming everybody probably has a different idea of what quality of life means to them personally.
Well, I can start. I think quality of life encompasses affordable housing. I guess the ability to kind of be mobile and have, I guess, public transportation available for residents, protecting green spaces, and then also providing some sort of economic resource for jobs and growth within the region.
Yeah, I'd like to expand on protecting green spaces. For me, when I was younger and I had young kids, that meant ball fields and practice areas and things like that. And now I'm more focused on things like walking paths and, places to exercise and of course, just, protecting environments that are vulnerable, like stream beds and things like that. But yeah, so for me, it's quality of life, the definition of that has changed.
I think that's an interesting point about like the age spectrum. And as we get further down the road with the public involvement plan, which is what we hope to address with you all next month, you'll see that we're trying to recognize like the different definitions of quality of life across, youth up until our senior communities. So I appreciate the distinction there with how that changes over time. So we heard green space, jobs, housing, economic opportunity, mobility. These are all themes that we'll be looking at as part of our data and analysis of the existing conditions that, and these are all things that will be addressed by the partner agencies during the topical presentations. And ultimately all this data, the existing conditions, the trends, they're going to influence the goals, policies, and strategies that you as an SAC work together with us to develop for the comprehensive plan. We started talking about this a little bit last month during our discussion about goals, policies, and strategies. So when I say this here, I'm talking capital G, P, and S. And as you saw, these are recommendations that get formally included as part of the plan. You should be a little familiar with these now since Plan 2040 and then the kind of highlights that we provided last week about those that are relevant to Region 2. But based on the trends and trying to kind of maintain quality of life, these will be the direction that the plan heads. And then I just wanted to emphasize that this may be, I should have, when I put this slide together, not left public outreach as a bullet point, but the point of this slide is to kind of break the process down. So we're doing the existing conditions, plan development, public review, legislation, public review. And over the whole course of all of these steps in the process, public outreach is going to be a huge component. It's not just limited to the first bullet point, but we did put it there since it's very important. And we're looking forward to, as I said, next month, kind of reviewing our public involvement plan with you to make sure that as representatives of Region 2, it makes sense that we're engaging in the right spaces and we're engaging broadly and diversely. So we look forward to that opportunity to make sure that our public outreach is first and foremost, and then also consistent throughout the process. Does anyone have any questions about this at all? Okay. Okay, now here's our poll, our brain break for a moment. So I believe that we have programmed this into Zoom. And if you're in the audience as an attendee and not as an SAC member, please feel welcome to participate in this. We'd love to know what your favorite way to spend time outside in Region 2 is. And this does go back to some of that quality of life, recreation stuff that was mentioned earlier.
So we can only pick one, huh?
I mean, I love that. Maybe that means there's an appetite to pick more than one, but yeah, we did. The polling only lets us pick one. I guess you could go with other and then tell us your.
No, I got
another. Okay. All right, we've got 86% participation. That's pretty good. So.
All right.
Looks like walking my dog is that's a fun activity for folks. And then hiking trails at Patuxent. That's a great community resource. Yeah. Not a lot of roller skating or skateboarding. Okay, that's fair. That may be one for our youth participants to take on. Glad to see that not too many people have turned into indoor people because of COVID and winter. So glad everyone's still getting out. So now we'll go ahead. You always know we're giving you a poll before we get into the highly technical stuff. So I'm going to hand this over to Mark to walk us through APFO and growth management.
Sure. Okay, so Carrie walked you through those first two modules for those MDP materials. We're going to pick up with the third one and get through 4 and 5 as well. And again, we're just hitting the highlights because, you know, the other point of this meeting was we'll give you the highlights, but we also want to hear from you about any of the questions you may have or comments that you have about planning in general, Maryland planning, and then specifically maybe Plan 2040. And that's why we had that Google form open. So thanks to some folks that did provide some comments or questions in there, but we'll also open it up throughout this presentation as well if you do have any questions or comments. So some of the growth management tools that we have within the state and here in Anne Arundel County are adequate public facility regulations. And basically what we're looking at here is we just want to make sure that we're directing growth to areas where there are adequate public infrastructure, right? So making sure that there's water and sewer, road capacity, school capacity, and making sure that that infrastructure exists or will exist. So for example, tying this back to Plan 2040, many of those built environment goals, so sort of also crash course in Plan 2040, we've got 4 chapters: the natural environment, built environment, healthy communities, which addresses like public facilities, and then a healthy economy. So in the built environment, we have several goals that recommend like an overhaul of the code and the adequate public facilities ordinance. Again, what sort of makes holds developments accountable for making sure that there's capacity for that particular development, and again making sure that we're rigorously guiding development and achieving those vision and themes of Plan 2040. Okay. Moving on to then a couple other growth management tools. We have zoning, which I think everybody is very familiar with. Again, zoning sort of dictates how high you can build, how high you can develop a building, construct a building, where you can place that building on a site, and some of those other sort of intensity and density type of questions about development. I sort of wanted to draw your attention to this slide, and I'm not sure how clear it's going to show up or if you can make out some of those colors, but you've got the Oxbow Preserve in the green, and then you've got this sort of gradient of colors or leading from the Oxbow Preserve down to Route 198. And that's to sort of indicate the intensity, where you've got a low intensity type of development closer to the Oxbow Preserve, and then it gradually gets more intense as you get to Maryland 198. And again, that's just one of those tools that we use because we don't want to necessarily have intense development or an industrial zoning sort of right next to some of our natural areas. Not to say that there isn't those areas here in the county, but again, making sure that we just sort of, again, plan appropriately so that we're not putting intense or facilitating dense development next to our environmentally sensitive areas. So the comprehensive zoning process, which we'll do at the end of this region plan process, will be one of the tools we'll use to ensure that there's consistency between zoning as well as the planned land use map. And the planned land use map was that map that was on Carrie's first slide. And we can come back to that because I'd like to show you some of the maps and resources we have available on the website. They're more interactive, where you can zoom in, zoom out, toggle on some layers, and really just kind of play around to get a little more familiar with some of the terms and the geography that we're working with as well. And easements, I don't mean for you all to really examine the illustration that's in this picture, but really just the main point here is when a development is proposed, in this case, a subdivision, there are certain areas where a developer has to set aside land for forest conservation, open space. There are various other types of easements that are in the toolbox that get employed when there's a development to ensure that some of the environmental resources are protected, as well as making sure that there might be some recreational areas for the community. So moving on to some additional land conservation tools. We've got clustering as well as conservation subdivision. And, I like using pictures. I'm more of a visual person. So looking at the top half of that picture, looking at a conventional subdivision where you have a piece of property and you just cookie cutter it up into and making sure that everybody has their own slice of the pie, if you will. And there isn't much conservation of any of those resources in between, or any recognition of any of those natural resources. So a conservation subdivision actually takes those into account, and you build around those during the development process. And that's also a form of clustering. You're sort of clustering those homes in a certain manner. So, there again, pulling it back to Plan 2040, we do have a strategy to revise the cluster subdivision provisions in the county code to, again, more effectively protect open space and environmental features. And then the other item here I just want to mention is tax credits, financial incentives. There are various tools to encourage land preservation and guide development to already developed areas. And we can talk about that a little bit more. I think I do have a slide and some additional information on that. So that's module 3. Module 4 is the environment, green development, housing, and transportation. There was a lot in this module, and sort of not going into each one so separately. I do have some slides here for housing and transportation, but really just what I want to draw your attention to is this concept of sustainable development. And if folks are familiar with the term sustainable, we want to make sure that we meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And thinking more about sustainable development, we're looking at everything from site design. So some of those slides that I showed you before, where you're laying out where homes are going to go or where commercial buildings are going to go, to building architecture, making sure that you might have a green building that's environmentally friendly. It builds in some renewable resources, renewable energy resources, all the way down to building fixtures, low flow shower heads, items like that. We won't necessarily be dealing with those last couple of items, but just thinking again on the larger scale of site design and how we can, again, plan for sustainable development so that we're not just planning for ourselves, but those future generations as well. It also takes into account historic preservation. Complete streets is a term you might hear often. You'll probably hear about that more in our topical meeting on transportation. Really just making sure that you're building a road that doesn't just accommodate cars. You're building it for every person. Sidewalks, bike ped facilities, handicap facilities, items like that. Taking into account parking, the transportation, public transportation system, and renewable energy. Let's see. You know what? I jumped ahead. I apologize. Carrie's got us on the right track here with the water sewer master plan. The water sewer master plan also reflects where the county is anticipated to grow and not grow. Like I said, is you're going to keep hearing this theme of where the infrastructure is, because it becomes quite costly to extend water sewer lines and any other type of infrastructure, even roads, to make sure that there's capacity into areas where there isn't development. So it's a cost savings there, and again, just more efficient to grow where there's already that growth in infrastructure. And then on the right-hand side, looking at the capital improvements, where we've got, where the county allocates its funding of where it wants to invest. And again, all that is dictated by this idea of sustainable growth and making sure that we're building and growing in those areas where there's infrastructure. So one other quick note here with water sewer master plan is that is also currently going to the county council shortly. So that's again one of those other tools that helps influence our region plan, and it all kind of works together here. So, all right. So this is one of those tools that's within Plan 2040. It's our development policy areas in Region 2. And again, this is a map I'll bring up later so that we can zoom in a little bit more. But again, we've got our, this is just sort of that broad level sort of policy guidelines of where we want to grow and where we don't want to grow. So in Region 2, we've got the neighborhood preservation area, which are existing residential communities and natural areas that are not intended for substantial growth or land use change. The critical economic area is where we have existing some commercial activities, and that's where we do want to focus some of our growth. And then we've got our critical corridor, which is your Maryland 198, where it's that existing developed area along a major road where there are opportunities to improve safety and mobility. And then the green area to the south is our rural and agricultural, and that's our communities that are characterized by large lot residential areas, farms, limited commercial and industrial areas, and also our parklands as well. So let's see. Then moving on, this is the slide I had jumped, unfortunately, ahead to, but taking all those ideas into account of sustainable development, and sort of looking at this as sort of maybe a model community. This isn't a blanket statement. We're not advocating this for the entire Region 2, but if there might be areas where there is already that infrastructure that you can build on it, so you can locate housing and commercial development and any other recreational areas, and even working in the transportation idea of locating these areas around public transportation. And it's sort of, again, what are some of those, what are the benefits of that is you're creating a more efficient type of development. You're not having to extend water and sewer lines. People are riding public transportation, which cuts down on carbon emissions. So really trying to take into account the balance or the trade-offs with a lot of these issues, right? So you've got density, which means going up, but your carbon emissions might be able to go down as a result. So again, I just want you to start thinking about a lot of these topics that we'll start getting into over the next few months. And what Carrie had prompted you all about was quality of life. What are the most important things to you? What makes your quality of life? So again, just something to think about. Then looking at the housing section of this module, again, just want to mention that we do work closely with several other departments whose expertise is affordable housing, and just talking about the different types that might be necessary to, again, consider as we start planning. So not only the affordability, but the types. So we often think of single family homes, and then there's a variety of what we consider missing middle housing, which again, helps create more affordability within the community and different styles and variation. So just one other thing to think about there. A couple other points about why it might be necessary to include affordable housing in community is the concern about equity. So if you've got public servants who aren't making or don't have a high income, they might have to live outside of the community. And so how does that look then if you want your public servants, your fire, police, teachers, folks like that, do you want them living in the same jurisdiction as where they work? And housing far from jobs, understanding that there could be a long-term consequence of the labor pool if people are having to commute long distances to get to their job. And then going along with that, with those longer commutes, what is that impact on the environment? What's its impact on the capacity of roads and the costs associated with that? So, so the challenge really is, understanding this housing landscape in the region, And over the next few months, we'll bring in our experts, and they'll be able to provide some additional context for that discussion as well. And hopefully it'll help then inform you all in making some recommendations to accommodate redevelopment, growth, and affordability into the future. All right. So transportation. I think everybody is really familiar with what some of the transportation issues are in the region and wherever you travel to. It's always congestion, traffic. But we always want to make sure, are the facilities safe? Are they accessible? And are they equitable? What are their capacities? What are their impacts on land use? So if you've got a 2-lane road, it's easy to have some commercial uses on that side of the road, and people can pull off, pull on. But if you're starting to build freeways with limited access, you may not be able to support those types of uses. So some considerations for that. And then if I were to go back to that model development, if you will, focus on public transportation and those higher densities. And if you've got higher densities, it can help support some of the other bicycle and pedestrian networks. If people can't afford a car, don't want a car, communities like that make it very easy to get around to where you might work or recreate as well. So one other highlight there is our Office of Transportation. When they come in to present in a couple months, they'll be talking about their ongoing process for updating the bicycle and pedestrian plan, as well as their Vision Zero plan, to make sure that these facilities are safe for everyone. And you'll learn how they complement the work that we're all doing with the region plan. So, and again, your role when these other departments come in to present is really just to, identify any issues that they're not talking about, or identify gaps in some of the work that they're doing as well. And that's something that we can consider. They might be able to provide some additional information on it, or ultimately that those items can go into our goals, policy, strategies at the end of our work here. So tying this all together, this is our development policy area map again, with the solid colors being, or I'll say this is those hatch marks are our overlays. So we've identified transit-oriented overlays as well as a village center overlay in the Jessup area. And transit-oriented overlay meaning, are there opportunities to increase density and provide a mix of uses around our train stations? Again, going back to that point of, if we can increase density around that public transportation to increase ridership, so that people don't necessarily need a car to go where they work or where they want to go play. These are all opportunities to do that. And so this, again, our development policy area are those broad guidelines of sort of where we're going to focus growth to help support those missions. And so that was module 4. Our last module here is Maryland's Smart Growth Vision for the Future. And really, the big takeaway here is just that the state is focused on providing the support, resources, and tools for communities to implement sound planning. Okay. So probably as you were working through all these modules, you started sort of picking up on a lot of themes of smart growth, 12 visions, and they were all very much related. They might have just been using different terms, but I think the concepts were very much baked into each one of those modules. So with that, like I said, that's our last slide for module 5. Do you all have any questions before we get into the questions that we received from folks? Or do you want to launch into that? Okay, so let's start out with the questions that we got from folks. The first one was, I'm not
sorry, Mark, for posterity, just a reminder that these are questions that members of the SAC sent in prior to the meeting for us to address tonight. So just want to make sure we have that recorded for everyone.
Great, thanks, Carrie. Okay, so I'm not going to read the question. Well, let me pull out some highlights. So how did we take into account the changing demographics? And then how does COVID impact some of the things that we're talking about here? So during Plan 2040, the county contracted with a consultant to prepare a land use market analysis, studied the economic and demographic trends in the county and how these trends are projected to impact demand for different land uses in the county. And so all of that really influenced those goals, policies, and strategies, as well as our planned land use map. Let's see. And then the second part about COVID. So, right, while the long-term ramifications of the pandemic are still uncertain at this point, the policies of Plan 2040 do support recovery and resilience. So, for example, the Healthy Economy Policy 1.1, we talk about preparing and implementing an economic development strategy that promotes recovery from the COVID-19 crisis. We also do have a strategy that recommends the county conduct a physical impact analysis that takes into account COVID-19 related impacts. So, we do recognize that the county's demographics, or I'll say this, is the county remains a strong retail market, particularly in the Parole, Odenton, Arundel Mills area. But still some of the county's malls may experience some transformation and expansion of uses and services to better respond to national trends in the shopper behavior. So I'm not sure who specifically asked that question, but if you do have any follow-up, I'm happy to go into that some more if you'd like. Okay. Carrie, do you want to take the second one?
Sure. So then we also received this question about the demographic data for Region 2 and whether it includes counts of the incarcerated people at correctional facilities in Jessup. So this is something we are still working on an answer to clarify. The data that is published on the hub currently that you have access to is American Community Survey data. So that data is derived from a sampling of housing units as opposed to census data, which does aim to count every person. So I am not sure and can't say with certainty yet whether the ACS data does count incarcerated individuals. Going forward, we will be using census data and then what we call traffic analysis zone data, which also pulls from census. So we will aim to get clarity on this question for you. That said, the latest data that I could find about the number of people who are incarcerated in Jessup appeared to be around 2,000, or about 4% of the total population for Region 2. So I can say it doesn't seem at this point that this is enough to skew our planning recommendations. And I would even say that the continued inclusion or the future inclusion of the incarcerated population might be important to consider for our infrastructure impacts in particular. But I don't have 100% answer on this yet. And I will follow up with members of the SAC once we get clarification from our research team. So if anyone wanted to talk more about this, please feel welcome.
Yeah, I thought the population was much higher than 4,000.
Then 2,000?
Oh, 2,000 you said. Yeah, I thought it was, much higher than that.
It may be higher. I was looking at a census of that's like a census prison count that, I don't know. It was from 2019. So I'm afraid this is out of my wheelhouse of research familiarity. So I don't really want to even commit to saying that what I found was up to date, but I just wanted to tell you what preliminarily it looks like. But either way, our research our research team is working on an answer to this. So we can get back to you and kind of assess what the impact is and what that means for the planning.
Right, because there's quite a few different facilities in my backyard.
Yes, I was reading about that.
It's not just one, it's
4 or 5.
Actually, I think it's almost a dozen. I
A
think it's
dozen.
11,
Okay.
10 or
Yeah,
11.
it's quite possible that I missed a few. So
Right. Okay, thanks for looking into it.
yeah. We also got a question about, sorry, I have to move my screen's blocking, something on my screen is blocking this. We got a question about the old YMCA building in Jessup on 175. Why can't this be used as a community center? So I'm going to answer this question with a question, which is, have you as SAC members had the chance to review the land preservation, parks, and recreation plan? There is one from 2017 that's present, and then there's, or current, I should say, and then there's a draft version that I'm going to link to you in the chat right now. We will also follow up over email. Questions about kind of like community facilities like this. This would be sort of likely to fall under the Department of Recreation and Park and is like a programming question. So I looked through the 2022 draft plan, and the 2022 draft plan, which actually, well, I'll say that later. The 2022 draft plan, it identifies a bunch of recreation and park improvements in Region 2. It does include a recommendation to evaluate recreation opportunities in the forest area adjacent to Jessup Elementary School. And that includes the development of facilities if feasible. The draft plan also recommends the acquisition of more parkland adjacent to Jessup Park, the development of a multi-generational recreation facility in Maryland City. And it highlights the capital improvement project at Provinces Park to construct the West County Aquatic Center, which is an active CIP project to develop a new facility in our region. So the short answer is maybe the YMCA building could someday become a community center, but there are all these great projects that the Department of Recreation and Park has identified for the region that you might find interesting and useful. And there is an opportunity on Thursday, February 24th, to join a town hall to deliver testimony on this plan, draft plan, or you can currently still submit comments or testify about the plan. If you read through it and find that these things are important to you, we recommend that you consider sending in comments. And when we get to our community facilities evaluation, we can specifically look at this property and what sort of role it might have to play in the future of Region 2. But I did just want to highlight that there are some good ideas about programming for community facilities, as well as acquisition for more recreation, and a lot of emphasis on pickleball courts. So I recommend perusing that plan and teaching me how to play pickleball, because I haven't done it yet. Yeah, so does the person, I mean, I know these questions are anonymous, so feel free, but if you want to ask more or follow up on this, feel free to now or later over email if you prefer. Okay, yeah, I'm excited about what the plan, the LPPRP, they call it, has identified for the future of Region 2. So hopefully that's some synergy that we can support in our plan for this community out of the planning department. So moving on to this next question, Mark, I'm going to hand that to you.
Sure. So I'm going to read out some of the goals here to provide a little more context for some of the references here for Plan 2040. So built environment 2B, it says, consider the historic development patterns such as crossroad communities, encourage patterns to be respected, revise zoning and development provisions to, as needed to ensure development is compatible with rural development. During the region planning process, consider the guidelines developed in the South County Small Area Plan. And so the member had mentioned that Jessup is rural with R1 housing. So, this might be an interesting thing too, is where we talk about what some of the terms mean to us individually. When we're talking about land use and specifically the term rural, we'll apply it as we have it designated or explained in our development policy area map, as well as our planned land use map and zoning. So just making sure that we're all on the same page as to what we mean. That's always a good sort of baseline. So according to the development policy area map, Jessup is not actually designated as rural. And again, after this question, I'm going to bring up a few interactive maps, just so that we have a better idea of what we're all talking about here. And then the designation on the planned land use map identifies most of the Jessup area as low density residential, and the corresponding zoning districts for low density residential are R1 and R2. If you do want to make a note, those corresponding zoning districts for planned land use are found in volume 2 of the Plan 2040 on page 116. And I'll pull that up here shortly. And then 13.4a states limit the expansion of new commercial zoning outside of existing commercial corridors and hubs and planned mixed-use centers to encourage redevelopment and full utilization of existing commercial properties. So this strategy really serves as a guiding policy during our region plan process, as well as comprehensive zoning. And so the cue that we're actually taking is just from the adopted planned land use map from Plan 2040. So anything not already currently zoned commercial or mixed use, or not in the commercial or mixed use planned land use designation would fall outside of that purview. Okay. And then moving on to 5.2D, utilize financial and regulatory incentives and development agreements to encourage growth in targeted development, redevelopment, and revitalization policy areas, and evaluate the use of incentives such as density enhancements, impact and connection fee abatement, reduction in setback requirements, height bonuses, and floor area ratios increases. Floor area ratios is another way to measure density within an area. So the question is, explain the cost to the county for these financial and regulatory incentives to developers. So you can't really necessarily put an exact cost on some of these items, especially for regulatory items. But the concept is really just to focus development to those areas already developed or with infrastructure and away from green fields. Some resource that we can point you in the direction of is the county's commercial revitalization areas, the sustainable communities, as well as the Arundel Economic Development Corporation website that lists out different or various financial tools and programs that they have. To answer that question would be almost impossible, I think. I'm sure we could add up what the incentives have been over a certain time frame, but again, looking at the regulatory incentives, I think that would be pretty difficult to do at this point. And then the last couple questions here are, what are the critical economic and transit-oriented policy areas in Region 2? Understanding that the Odenton Town Center is already in Region 2, and talking about the map. So I think this is a good segue. Carrie, if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen, and we can look at some of the maps here together. Okay, so hopefully this is coming up as the General Development Plan website. Is everybody on that? Is that coming up for folks?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. So on this website, this is our Plan 2040 website. We provide some introductory text here. This is our development policy area map. Again, just a sort of a snapshot there. So we do have a more interactive website so that you can explore and sort of get some of the highlights of Plan 2040. That's this Plan 2040 story map. If you're really feeling strong, go for Plan 2040 Volume 1, which provides some of the context and then the runs into the goals, policies, and strategies. And then Volume 2 is a lot of the background information of the existing conditions that helped inform Volume 1. And hopefully everybody has sort of had a chance to skim some of those items. But I think the most important items are some of these web-based maps that I'd invite you to sort of come back to every so often. And this is our development policy area map that we talked about. So this is that broad level, and then sort of plan, land use, and zoning get more specific from here. So when you come to this landing page, you're able to zoom in quite a bit. And I don't think we have our region plan or our region boundaries on this. Let me see if I have that. Right. And maybe that's an update that we can make as well, just putting the region boundaries on that to be a little bit more helpful. But again, as Carrie oriented us earlier, we've got the Fort Meade, Patuxent area, Maryland City, Laurel, Annapolis Junction, Jessup, and then parts of Hanover. So going back here to our development policy area map. And one of the questions was, is Jessup rural? And those areas are really designated for these areas in Crownsville and then leading down into South County. Okay. And then if I were to bring up the, and again, this is in Plan 2040, this is the static map in Plan 2040, where we've got the descriptions for each one of these development policy areas, as well as a few other maps. And then we work into our planned land use map. And we do have an interactive map here that you can then click on and zoom into the areas and identify the planned land uses for your area. Okay. So again, going back to the question on hand here about Jessup being rural, we have it as this sort of tan color, this residential low density. Okay. So again, just want to orient you to some of the terms that we're using here for planned land use, development policy areas, the differences between those and zoning, and then the tools that we do have on our Plan 2040 website. Okay.
So does anyone have any questions or want us to go over anything else? Start. I know it's like a lot of. Okay. I think we had scheduled a 5-minute break at this point in the meeting. And in the next half of the meeting, we're going to go over some upcoming opportunities with the feedback maps. We'll kind of address a new resource, which is the one-pagers, talk a little bit about some public engagement and the driving tour. So, okay.
All right, so we'll meet back here at 7:05 if that works for folks. Okay, thanks.
Hi, Joe.
Hey there. Sorry about that. They power guys came by and they disconnected my Verizon, so I had to call them the Verizon people to come out and fix it.
Oh, no.
That's a problem when you need Zoom.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're with us and that it's back
Yeah.
on.
I was like, really? This is like terrible timing.
It's funny.
It is the harder part with these older neighborhoods. All the power lines are still up, up in the air. They're not buried. Well, it looks like we have a good chunk back, and I know it's already been about 6 minutes, so I guess why don't we go ahead and pick it back up, that way we're not running too much over.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, we're gonna we just have another poll to get us started again, but this one is actually a state your case poll. Don't hit the button poll. So to get us thinking about the driving tours that are coming up and that we're going to schedule a date for soon with you guys, we're hoping that you all can tell us what your favorite or most noticeable, let's say, community landmark in Region 2 is. So any community landmarks that you can think of that either, you love, or they challenge you, or they help define your neighborhood or region to you, please feel free to drop your answer into the chat or raise your hand and tell us, or don't raise your hand, just shout it out.
Well, I know when I first moved to the area, it's kind of funny, but when I would tell people where I lived, I would say, oh, it's near Corridor Wine, back when it used to be Corridor Wine. And people always knew that as a landmark. That's definitely what, even though it's now, I guess, a Total Wine there. But of course, I mean, I think, as well, like, Fort Meade is a big one too, just because it's so huge in the NSA. It's a big print there.
And Kevin, what's trusty friend?
Yeah.
Oh, you're on mute.
That's the old Shannon residence on Jessup Road. It was always a major landmark. That is just a beautiful Victorian house. Well, it's still there, but now it's surrounded. It's kind of like a little jewel in a jewel box now. It's no longer a Victorian home sitting with a tennis court in the front yard, but at least it's still there.
I hadn't heard the name trusty friend yet.
Well, that's how it's listed. That's how
Yeah,
it's
okay. Oh, I didn't realize.
we actually preserved the house as part of one of our communities. So I appreciate the compliment, Kevin. And unfortunately, you kind of stole my answer.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine.
2 votes for trusty friend.
So I'm a bit partial, but thank you.
Anyone else want to chime in a landmark?
I mean, Mark, you can definitely say Laurel Park. That's a huge part of the community.
Well, I didn't want to make a shameless plug, but
No, of course, no. It's a big part of the history there. I remember when I moved to Maryland. I grew up on a horse ranch, so coming here, it was really interesting to see the horse racing culture and how much of a horse culture there is in Maryland. You don't think of that in Maryland, but it's alive and well.
Yeah, I was shocked too. I didn't know until I moved up here. And Laurel Park, Bill Clinton's mother, Virginia Kelly, she used to go there quite a bit.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
I did not know
Oh,
that.
Oh,
really?
yeah. She used to live at Laurel Park whenever she'd come up here.
Didn't know that. That's great. Well, actually,
I
we
met
have a
her
lot
few
of,
times. She was a little firecracker, I'm gonna tell you. She was more like a stick of dynamite.
I think this
that
will be good when we do the driving tour because we'll be able to see more. I'm sorry, Patience.
No, that's, go ahead.
No, I said this will help with the driving tour because we can see more of these as well. But yeah, hopefully you have one, Patience, you're thinking of.
Well, I think this is the Patuxent Research Refuge coming off of 32, coming into Maryland. I mean, coming into Laurel. Yeah, it's just because the kind of the swamp on both sides. I don't know what to call it.
Yeah, that's right. The Patuxent Research Refuge. Yeah.
We're mosquito repellent. Man, I got eaten up a few times going there. And they call it a wildlife refuge, but you can hunt, which I'm still not getting how you can have that. Kind of like Ducks Unlimited. Let's conserve wetlands for ducks so we can go out and hunt them.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm all for hunting, so.
Well, this is a good moment for me to share one initiative that our Cultural Resources Division put out for Black History Month. So I do just want to share this map with everyone. Actually, I'll send it to everybody. I just realized I only sent that to the panelists. There are a couple of locations from the civil rights era that are marked as significant for Region 2, and these are kind of community, these are like stories gathered from members of the community. So when you have a chance, maybe you can look through this map just to see if there's landmarks that resonate with you or that are new to you, and we might pass a few of these on our driving tour. So there's some good history in this map. But to transition us back to a different sort of map. So coming up along with the driving tours, and Mark and I, we'll talk about that in a second, and some options for dates, and we'll send out a doodle poll. I wanted to highlight what's coming up at the end of this month, which is the launch of the Region 2 feedback map. And actually the feedback maps for all of the regions that are currently active will launch around the same time. And the feedback maps, I'm going to go ahead. I'm sorry, I have to share my screen again. And I'm going to show you an example of one that we did recently for the Green Infrastructure Master Plan. But this is going to be an online tool that anyone can go to who has access to the internet, and they can click on a point anywhere in Region 2 or actually anywhere on the map and leave a note saying whether they think that that area is an asset or a challenge or an idea for future improvement. So this would be your opportunity to mark the trusty friend and note that you thought this was a really wonderful community landmark. Or it could be you want to put a thumbs up on the wine store and say we need more of these in our neighborhood. Or however you want to interact with the map. But this is going to be one way that we're working with members of the public to get input in this kind of COVID-y time ahead of going into the topical meetings for the plan. So the feedback map is going to be up for 3 months. And we'll be doing a lot of marketing on our end and working with the various offices throughout the county to promote the map and make sure that we get strong engagement from people. There's also going to be an in-person component. So we will have printed maps at certain locations throughout Region 2 with instructions for folks on how to interact with them. And those will be at the libraries. We'll actually get to a point in a minute where I try to solicit some ideas from you about where to put those in-person maps. And then we will also, once we go on our driving tour, be able to add the points that we visit as a work group or that you visit as a work group onto the map so that the public can see where you went, how you kind of framed that visit. Was it a challenge or an asset or a thing that you think there needs to be more of? And then you can also be interacting with the public about the things that they're seeing. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to show you an example of this that we went through recently with the Green Infrastructure Master Plan. You can see my screen, I assume.
Yep, we
Great.
can see it.
So this was the map. We had a really simple coding system. Love it. I love this piece of green infrastructure. Add it. We need it here. Remove it. This shouldn't be on the map. And people were able to, if I click this, you can see, oh, Marilee, there you are. I'll click a different one. You're able to see this person decided to leave their name. They left some information about it. We also had the ability while this map was live, it's no longer live, but people could thumbs up comments, they could comment on them, have a dialogue with each other. Someone could say, hey, I love this park. And someone else says, I love it too. Or, hey, we really need a park in this neighborhood. I couldn't agree more. Or, and the goal with this was really to help members of the community talk to each other about the issues or kind of their ideas for, what's going on countywide. And also for us to kind of, we gathered a lot of insight from this map, really highly technical insight from this map for our plan. So I think this is going to be a good tool for us and for these Region 2 plans. And this will be something that's hosted on the hub. They'll have 2 tabs similar to this. So there'll be like a comments tab and then the explore tab. I'm sorry if it's going to take a second to load. And the purpose of the explore tab is to let you pull up different layers. So you could look at the time, this is the draft green infrastructure map. And then on top of it, you were able to click trails, click streams. Our map's not going to have this deep of an environmental component, but I just wanted to demonstrate to you like what the functionality is going to be like. And the idea is so that you can see countywide what the context of region 2 is, but then also zoom in on region 2 and see like, look at all the streams in region 2 and look at how everything's interconnected and kind of understand all of the other data that's going into the region. So again, this is something that we are working to finalize. Our goal is to have it released by the end of the month, or that's the anticipated date. We're doing our best. And then we will plan to parallel that digital engagement again with stuff in person. And then have this map and the SAC driving tour kind of talk back to each other. And we will use the insights from the planning angle to like help identify, challenges that need additional time in our topical meetings, things that people really love that need to be replicated. We'll start hearing some ideas from the community about what their vision for the future of Region 2 is. So I just want to highlight that. And then once again, I must share my screen. I guess I don't really have to, but yeah, it is the way we organize our presentations now. Actually, just real quick, did anyone have any questions about that or how that feedback map will work?
I do have a question, but it can wait if you want. If you need.
No, go ahead.
So when you look at those maps and you're gaining that feedback, is there like a certain threshold that you consider you a success that you got enough? Are you guys looking for 100 comments, 200 comments? What's kind of, because I know you said 3 months. So to me, that's, kind of a short time frame. And like in that 3 months, are you guys, what would you consider success in getting feedback?
I think that's a really good question and something that we're always trying to work to define. Personally, we did get several hundred comments for the green infrastructure map, and that was a countywide map and a countywide marketing effort. So while I would love to get several hundred comments for Region 2, I hope we have a very engaged group of folks that want to spend time with this map. I'd like to meet the threshold that we met for the green infrastructure plan, but knowing the challenge that we're working with a smaller geography. Something that's different about this though, is that we will be doing in person and, we're not just like putting the map in the library and leaving it. We're talking to them about coming in and supporting their programming. So I would also at the same time be surprised if we didn't get a bunch of great comments just because of the in-person engagement. To answer your question, I think that's something that maybe we would need to go back if you want us to come up with a metric or you guys want to come up with one as an SAC that we can work toward. we could do that. But I think just as long as we have, I think the more like different comments we see, the more we see people interacting with each other, the more the map like reflects the breadth of the region and isn't just focused to like one or two areas. That would also indicate success to me, like if it's not just people from one
I agree.
neighborhood.
Yeah, if it's like just the top and the bottom parts, that doesn't work, right? You know, yeah, I mean, I feel like it's got to be a good mix.
Mhm. And to your comment about the timeline, yes, you know, I think one thing that's hard is that you do have to have a pencils down moment at some point because Mark and I need to start analyzing the feedback. You know, I suppose maybe we'll get a push to keep the digital one up for a little longer and we'll have to address that when we get there. But I do know that as far as like the support of our community groups, they're giving us 3 months. So I to take space
No,
in
I mean,
there.
I think that's the challenge then for this committee, right? I mean, I think it's really going to be incumbent upon us to reach out to our contacts to say, we really need you to fill this out and then to do it in a broad way versus just going to one specific area. Like, I think if we can really fan out, because it'd be a shame if you guys put all this work into it and then we only got 30 comments, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
you know,
I can say that
maybe-
30 would feel disappointing.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think, you know, let's challenge ourselves as a committee to really make this a priority and to get comments in there.
And so Mark and I have thought about that a little bit and how can we support you in doing the outreach? And, you know, are you all set up with projectors at your community meetings? Maybe not. So what we thought was it might make sense for us to print extra copies of the large format map and maybe you all can share some of those. I know we have a lot of folks that are active with their other community groups, active with their church, active with their like professional organizations. And, you know, this is an idea that Mark and I are working on to sort of figure out if we can get some maps for you all to use at your engagement as well. But at the very least, pointing people to the online or to the libraries is going to be really helpful.
Yep.
And then this isn't a super groundbreaking slide here, but so these are, we have confirmation from Maryland City Library or Maryland City Community Library and Severn Community Library. Severn is outside of Region 2. It's right on the border. And we recognize that folks may be community members of all sorts of regions. So we feel comfortable having the Severn Library host and they have some great programming. So those two libraries have confirmed with us that they'll host. We've also reached out to one of our contacts at Fort Meade to ask if it's possible to host a map there. And we love your suggestions right now about other places that we should reach out to.
What about Russet Community? Like, we have a library here.
Russet.
That's
And
Maryland City Library.
that's
the
the
Maryland City.
Maryland City at Russet.
Oh,
I
that's it.
think
Oh,
is the
okay.
full title.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could also ask if we also have our Russet Community Center that we may be able to meet at, which is next door. So,
Are you looking for places to meet or places to put maps up?
This would be a place to host an unstaffed map. So it would be a map with instructions and comment cards and the fact sheet that we provided to you earlier this week, and just like a few relevant planning materials if people are interested in. But yeah, but for those that do want to host events, we are also open to hearing about that. But yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Well, no, I was just going to say we can put a couple at the clubhouse. We get people beyond our planning area, so I don't know if that matters or not. And I don't know how many people will give feedback, but we can put it there.
Yeah, just to clarify sorry, no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we also have a meeting room where we're happy to host meetings. We have community meetings and stuff all the time.
Awesome.
So,
for the printed version, it's going to be zoomed in on just Region 2. So the opportunity to comment outside isn't going to be the same as it will on the online map. But yes, that is a great suggestion for Laurel, and I appreciate the event space idea.
yeah. let me know.
And thinking about spaces that would be available to the public to just be able to pop in, say during normal business hours too, would be ideal.
I'm gonna stop sharing. It didn't feel worth it. Not to see your faces.
I know that it may be like on the fringe once again. I love the Severn. I was actually going to bring that one up. So I'm like, I know it's not in it, but like it's like right there. But what about the Anne Arundel Community College campus right on the outside of the periphery of the mall?
Mm-hmm.
Once again, I know that you're getting students from everywhere, but it's a public space. It's open.
Mhm.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah,
I know
and
it's
if-
not perfect, but I was just thinking like a public space and there's a lot of traffic.
No, it's great. I mean, they are part of Region 2, even if they live somewhere else, right? Because they go to school there and deal with our
Yeah.
traffic and our whatever else. So yeah, that's a great idea.
Do you have connectivity with the people at Fort Meade?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yes,
So,
Mark and I do from working on the Odenton Town Center plan.
because obviously that's a huge employer, and
Yep.
that, I mean, I don't know how you get to people there, but it'd be great to get feedback.
Yeah, it would.
Going on base commissary on paydays, the base grocery store on payday Saturdays.
That's a good idea.
You get everyone there. You might have to wrestle some of the Girl Scouts with the cookies because they can be aggressive. No, I'm serious. Some of them scare me.
Marilee, did I see you raising your hand?
Oh, I was just gonna say that if you wanted somewhere closer to Fort Meade, there's the National Cryptologic Museum.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I could I'm working on the improvement to that, so I can find out if they'd be willing to put something up for you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
But
And also there's the base. I can get onto the base with no problem. So, the post office as well. And they have the little boards by the exchange and in the commissary.
Yeah, post
The
office
little
is
public
interesting.
information centers, so people can get the word out.
Thank you.
The Maryland City Fire Department,
Mm-hmm.
they do, I know they do community meetings there a lot, so.
But is Laurel Racetrack an option also? Like an indoor location there?
Yeah, we said that, we can do that. I can do a couple, I mean,
It's great.
big enough.
Great. Well, these are all really great ideas. And so Mark and I will look at what's possible on our end and talk to people, and we will report back to you. And
Do we have any ideas for we're kind of like, seems like we're a little more southish. Is there anything kind of northern district?
Yeah, I was going to mention
Okay.
well, Jessup has a fire hall as well.
Okay.
And the Jessup Community Center is not typically open. It's, usually for private events, but if it can, if I haven't been active since before COVID, but I'm not sure if they're meeting in person yet, but if not yet, okay. I can see Nicole shaking her head. Okay. So that's not a good idea then.
No, we could, if we wanted to do a meeting regarding this, the JIA has a vested interest in this. I'm communicating with them regularly. If we wanted to do a one-time meeting, because they do have such a vested interest in this, we could set it up to do that. The Jessup Volunteer Fire Station, or the one on Dorsey Road. The one on Dorsey Road is bigger. So I would like to see if we could maybe put it there, which is just outside of Region 2, but the Jessup volunteer one doesn't really have the space to put it there, but the one on Dorsey Road may.
Terry, did you say post offices were an option?
I don't know. I think Guernica said that, and I hadn't considered. So
No.
I have no idea.
You're definitely going to get a lot of like public foot traffic in the region from there, right?
Yeah, and I have no idea what they're.
Even the Laurel post office, when people have to pick up packages, we in Anne Arundel and West County, we have to go to the one on Main Street. So
Yeah. I'll ask around and see what
think if
people's
we-
experience has been.
I think if we advertise in the post office where to find this
Mhm.
information and go comment on it would be the same thing at the, like for us in Jessup, the Panera. If they have a community board, so if we advertise there on where to find this information and to go comment on it would be the ideal means of communication.
Yeah, that's a great point. So we will be developing digital flyers that can be printed for this. So, I mean, you hope me, I'm not sure, I can't say whether we can print any, but at least we'll have the digital one, and we will try to target, you know, the grocery stores, the post offices. Those are great ideas.
Just the post office only allows like 2 people in at a certain time, and there's physically just not enough space to put the map and the physical things you're going to need to do that. That's why I was thinking that same thing with the Jessup fire station. It's physically just not big, but the one on Dorsey is bigger. And I'll talk to the JIA, but again, like Mr. McFarland said, it's just not open.
Yeah.
So I don't have any alternatives at this time, but if we want to schedule a meeting, they would be more than willing to do that, to host a meeting for people to have public comment, and people will come because they really want to comment on this.
Great. We are looking forward to engaging them. So in the time before now and when the map goes out and we have these materials and going forward, so I just dropped another link into the chat. And this, we also emailed this to you. It's also available on the hub. So this is our Region 2 fact sheet. It's meant to be a resource for you as members of the SAC to use in your community engagement. So you can print it, you can attach it to an email, you can link folks to it, whatever you need in order to help explain the process and what the timeline is. If you're looking at it with me right now, you can see that it includes a map. It identifies Joe and Keisha and their contact information so that they can continue to be out in the community, you know, working with folks to get feedback. And then on the back page, we have an updated planning milestones graph, contact information for Mark and myself. And there's also some key terms at the bottom for what's planned land use, what's zoning, what's public facilities. We try as hard as we can not to be using planneries all the time. So we did want to make sure that for folks who are just engaging with this process for the first time, they can kind of, you know, get up to speed with where we are on what the purpose of this plan is. So we hope that you all find this useful. If you have feedback on it, we'll take it, obviously, but then the kind of flyers that we'll develop around the feedback map, and then going forward for things like the public town hall, visioning other public events and opportunities we have, we'll continue to develop those and share them with you, and they'll look similar to this, but be shorter for social media. Any questions about that? Okay.
Probably getting ahead, but how do you guys sort through and collect and disseminate all that data that you'd be collecting on that map?
So for the green infrastructure plan, we downloaded all of it into a spreadsheet and responded to the comments. And then we analyzed what the themes were. So if there was a lot of themes, say for Region 2, there might be a lot of themes around congestion. There might be a lot of themes around walking paths or trails or different commercial options or something. We can look through and identify where the commonalities are, and then also importantly, where there are not any kind of shared ideas. And we will like distribute a findings memo to you and release that to the public.
And in the interim, I think we'd encourage you to keep checking back to see how populated these maps get with the dots, so that when we do have the topical meetings over the next 8 or so months, if you're noticing things, those would be good questions to ask, right? So transportation might come and say, hey, we're doing a corridor study here. Here's the scope of the work. You might be able to say, hey, we're noticing here on the feedback map that there's you might need to extend the scope or the geographical scope or any other items, if they can. Otherwise, like I said, those can be folded into the goals, policies, strategies that we start forming here at the end of the process. So check back, see where there might be some gaps or major issues. And again, please do bring those up during those topical meetings.
Yeah, and I definitely think we should, like, during this meeting, once we launch it, like a month in, like, let's look at it and see where we're at. And if we're low on comments, let's make it a strategic item to figure out how we can get more.
Yeah. We had a pickup in usage on the map last time after holding a large public meeting and also after doing a demonstration video on how to use it. So, I mean, these are all things that we can consider how to ensure engagement, but yeah. Okay. So we are, oh, I forgot. So with the driving tour, so Mark and I are planning to send you a doodle poll next week for nailing down the driving tour date. And right now we are looking mostly at early April. We're aware of spring break and trying not to conflict with the spring break and folks who might be going away on vacation or have kids. But we wanted to ask, right now it's looking like Saturday mornings are pretty good. And we wanted to get a sense from you whether Saturday mornings generally are a time that we could put on the doodle poll, and also how you feel about Sundays or if those are family time. Okay, so expect us if nobody's got, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I don't know if you want folks to, like, raise their hand and say Saturdays.
Yeah, if you have a strong opinion.
I mean, I think Saturdays are good.
I'm fine with Saturdays or Sundays, whichever
Okay.
one.
All right, so that's what we'll.
Sundays. Yeah, just.
So my commitment is that there will be snacks. I
Okay.
will make sure there's snacks. I told Carrie and Mark we will have snacks.
Yeah,
So
and
I
again,
promise
we're looking at doing like a bus thing, so we'll be sharing a vehicle together, and but
you can't have a road trip without snacks. So
yeah. But we'll look forward for more information for that, and we'll next week. But we feel glad that you guys don't mind if we put Saturdays and Sundays on the doodle poll. So, and then I'm just going to share my screen for the last few minutes of the meeting again. Oh, sorry. Okay. So we just wanted to zoom in on a couple of upcoming opportunities here. Where's the share screen button? There it is. Sorry, I'm losing my mind. So yeah, so like I said, the February 28th is our target date for the feedback map going live. We also are closing the survey that's currently on the Region Hub on March 1st. It will have, by March 1st, it will have been open for 90 days, which again is sort of our benchmark for some of this digital engagement. We also want to make sure once we put the new tool on, that we are focused on that new tool. So that is our plan, is to take the first survey down March 1st and report back to you all any insights that we got from that. On March 17th, we have our next meeting, and the topic for that meeting is going to be the public involvement plan. So we will be going more into depth with you on, stakeholders that we've identified, how we're engaging them, what kind of our work together looks like through the rest of this year and into next year. And just kind of the ins and outs of how we're reaching the public and what the marketing and what the substantive engagement is going to be around that. We'll hopefully be able to send you some materials again prior to that meeting so that you can review and come prepared to, help us make it better. As I just mentioned, late March, early April are the dates that we're looking at for the driving tour, and we look forward to nailing that down soon. We have a public town hall meeting that is currently being scheduled. That's coming up early. It looks like it's in April. We don't know exactly when, but that is going to be an all region meeting. So members of the public can come to this meeting and town hall style, ask all of their questions about what the process is going to be. We will provide you more information as the SAC about that as soon as we have that information. It'll also be a good opportunity for us to kind of go through the feedback maps again, and another opportunity to advertise how to participate in that, as well as any kind of upcoming opportunities to get involved in the various regions. And then April 24th is going to be our first, or 21st, excuse me, is our first topical meeting as a group. And that topic is on the economy and on public facilities. And then again, May 31st is our anticipated close date for the feedback maps. Okay. There's no questions about this. I'm going to turn it over to Mark to do like a quick, got to run through how to the Google Drive organization real quick.
Let me just ask folks before we jump into that. I mean, do you want me to open up the Google Drive, share screen and walk through that? Or is everybody pretty comfortable with how to use Google Drive?
I would say, Mark, why don't you do it? Just so that way, because I think it's going to be such a vital hub for what we're doing, and I want to make sure everybody's comfortable with it. Because I know that it takes some transition to get used to it versus just having a document emailed to you. But I think for all of our sanity and all the emails, it'll be better if we kind of learn that the resources are there, and you can go there anytime, and that way you're not having to find an email.
Yeah, exactly. So what I've typically been doing is in our emails, I think most often I do include the actual attachment and then provide a link to where it can be found on the Google Drive. But this is really your landing page. If I were to just back up one more, you might even land here with only one folder to open. So that's your committee materials. And then we've got in the administrative folder, just some of the more static documents. This is that graphic of the consensus continuum, the charter that we recently revised, and big plug, alarm bells, please review this, sign it, and drop it in this signed charter folder. Okay, so homework item number 1 is open up the charter. So I'm going to scroll it all the way down. I think it's really page 8 or so, or 7 rather. Name, signature, date, save it, drop it into the folder there. The handbook, and then the resolution for your actual appointments to the SAC. Again, all administrative stuff. Background in education, the Anne Arundel, the AACO background materials. This includes your volumes 1 and 2 of Plan 2040. Carrie had prepared just sort of some snippets from volume 1 of where region 2 is identified within Plan 2040, and then the land use market analysis that I had mentioned as far as how we talked about trends and changing demographics within the county. Anne Arundel County training materials, online ethics training, alarm bells, homework item number 2. We have only received half of this ethics training certificates from folks. So if you have not done it, you must do it. It is required. Please do that and send it to Carrie and myself. Okay. Same goes for, and sorry, let me open this up too, is this provides actually the link as well as some instructions on how to do that depending upon where you are, where you're logging in. Okay. Open Meetings Act is a third homework assignment. Okay. So here is, I think it's at the bottom, is click highlighted link to take the online training. Okay. Alarm bells, third homework assignment. Okay. Recap: charter, ethics, and the Open Meetings Act. Okay. Training that you all need to take. If you haven't done it, You'll get a certificate for the ethics and open meetings. Send them to Carrie and myself. And then this last folder are those 5 modules that we covered today, as well as just a 1-pager of the highlights, I roughly covered in the presentation. Backing back out, community outreach. In here, we've got the fact sheet Carrie just covered, as well as the meeting tracking sheet that I think we sent between the first meeting and this meeting, where again, is if you're out in the community chatting with folks, just note it so that we know sort of who you all are meeting with, when you're meeting with them, how often you're meeting with them, what type of topics that you're talking about. That's all sort of just helpful, because this will sort of be folded into then the document at the end of the process. We're able to say, we had X number of town halls, we received X number of comments during various review and comment periods, and this is how SAC members got the word out into the community and chatted it up. So please, remember to, if you are meeting with the community, come back to the Google Drive, and it's going to be in it's going to be in, again, the community outreach folder, and just plug in some information. It doesn't have to be, super thorough, but just provide as much information as you can, just so that it's documented.
And thank you, Nicole, for filling one in already.
I was just going to say, super shout out, kudos to Nicole.
Yeah, thank you. Then we've got our meetings folder. This is really just our minutes, presentations, agendas. We'll throw that in these folders before and after the meetings as well. For example, after this meeting, we'll put the adopted minutes in the folder. Photos of Region 2, we're always looking for photos. So we have included some of the photos from the kickoff event that we had in the middle of December. If you're driving around the community and we talked about landmarks before, if you want to snap a picture of your favorite landmark or favorite thing in the community, please feel free to drop that picture in here. It's really helpful, because then when we put the document together, it's great to have a lot of the photos that you all as SAC members think are important, rather than the Office of Planning and Zoning. We'll take pictures as we go through the process, but it's just nice to sort of have you all have that ownership and contribution to the document when we're all finished with this. So keep that in mind too. And I think that's it. Again, we've got this other folder here for signed and completed certificates for the Ethics and Open Meetings Act. If you want to drop them there, that's fine. I go in periodically just to check to see if anybody felt it was just easier to do that, no problem. Or like I said, feel free to send it to Carrie and myself. So that's hopefully a crash course. Like Joe was saying, is sometimes it's hard to go back and find an email that has the attachment. This is your one-stop shopping for all the deliverables that we have for you all. So certainly encourage you to get familiar with this.
Yeah, what I always recommend to people with Google Drive is to just get in there and start clicking around.
Yeah.
It actually is really intuitive. It makes a lot of sense. I know it's a different way of thinking, and we all have our different ways of filing things, but I think if you even just spend 30 minutes playing with it, you'll realize how it works and how it interacts with the email, and it's all tied in. And like I said, it's really a lot more efficient for us as a group if we use it. So I just really want to emphasize that. I get it. It's taken me a long time to get comfortable with it too, but it's really worth it once you do.
Yeah. So I know we jumped around in the agenda a little bit, and we put Plan 2040 summary together with the planning modules. We did some of the old business before the Google tutorial. I do just want to run through a couple of other items. We talked about sort of putting together another sort of crash course or helpful tips for Robert's rules. we'll go ahead and send you something for that. I don't think it needs a large discussion. I think it's just pretty straightforward of, having a motion, second discussion, and how we all vote on some of those items. So we can do that for you all. The meeting tracker I just covered. Carrie reviewed the driving tour dates. We're also going to provide you a spreadsheet to just sort of help us start to plan out the route for the driving tour. So it'll be a similar spreadsheet, like in a Google Sheet form, where we'll just ask sort of what are some of the highlights that you want to cover? Why do you want to cover them? Things like that. We'll fill it out so that fill out the columns so that you just have to fill out the information below. And again, that just helps us figure out which routes we're going to be taking, since we can't cover every single road in Region 2. So be on the lookout for that in an email next week. Feedback map, Carrie covered, and then training certificates. I forget if I mentioned it before, but it's your ethics, your Open Meetings Act, and
Charter.
The handbook charter. Yep.
Right. Okay. Get those to us as soon as possible. The ethics and the open meeting are absolutely required. Okay. So we need those from you. And then Carrie covered the next steps. So I think before we move on.
And I would just put in a plug for the trainings. If you sit down, you can crank them out, maybe grab a favorite adult beverage. That helps a little bit too, as you're kind of like going through them, because they can be a little dry, but you can get through them pretty quickly. But it actually is informative. You can learn a lot just about certain things, and they give you some interesting scenarios, especially in the ethics thing. So I think that's just important that we kind of go through that. I mean, it's required, but just want to echo what Mark says.
So Joe, we've got about 9 minutes left. I'm going to hand it off to you before we adjourn. That's okay. For any questions or comments from the public.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody from the public that wants to
We
say
have one member of the public. So
okay.
I'll click Paul, if you want to suggest, if you want to ask any questions or comments, the floor is all yours. Or if you don't have anything, I'll leave it up to Joe to wrap us up.
No problem. Well, great. Well, Paul, you can always reach out to us via email. You're always welcome to do that. Once again, I really appreciate the handout. I think that's really, really helpful. And I think that, we can kind of start working, and if folks need things, maybe if folks need help with like some social media messaging on how to, that first survey is closing. And I think we definitely want to keep a focus on that and make sure that we get some more answers. I know I'm going to be posting on my social networks, just telling my neighbors to fill it out. So I think that's really, really important. Once again, I like the idea. I mean, I know we're talking a lot about this driving tour, but I just think it's going to be so important for us to really kind of look, see, feel, smell. I think someone said last time about this area and what we kind of need there. So, definitely think for that. But, thankfully, the numbers are getting a lot better, and we're, Omicron's going. So, I feel really comfortable that we'll be able to do this in April. And we'll all feel comfortable doing it, and I appreciate the county getting us transportation to do that as well, because I think that'll be really helpful, and I think the town hall will be helpful as well. So definitely, I know that there's a lot of meetings coming up. I know it feels like these past couple meetings have been like a lot of revving up the engine, but once this engine gets going, it's going to be a lot. So I appreciate Carrie and Mark really giving us all a really solid foundation, because once we start moving, it's going to go fast, and we're not going to have a lot of time to kind of go over a lot of the basics again as we're trying to accomplish this. It's pretty tight timelines, which is a good thing. That keeps us on track and keeps us moving forward. So, and then of course, Keisha and I meet and talk, and with Carrie and Mark. So, if you have thoughts about these meetings, if there's something better we can do, if you have thoughts, we're always happy to take feedback too. We're learning. It's the first time I've ever done this, so feel free to reach out to us and say, hey, let's try this, let's try that. I like the polls idea, that just kind of break it up. We want to keep this interesting and engaging for you because we know that you're taking time away from your loved ones and families and friends to be here. So, we appreciate that. So we're always happy to take feedback. Please know that.
You must not know me. I don't have any friends, loved ones.
Well, we're it then for you, right? So join us here. So yeah, I think that's really, really helpful and important. So always know that we have follow-up meetings after these meetings to talk about next steps and pieces there. So if there's something that you feel like we need, just let us know and we'll make sure we'll work with Mark and Carrie to get that. Excellent. Well, with that, Mark, can I ask for a motion to adjourn? Is there anything else?
That's it. Yeah,
All
motion.
right, anybody? Looks like
A motion
Keisha.
to adjourn.
I'm going to give it to Nicole. Her hand got up first. So I'm going to get a second by Nicole. So with that, can I get ayes to adjourn?
Aye.
All right, great. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I apologize for being late, but this was a great meeting, and I look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank
Night,
you.
everybody.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.